I died at home, as you said, and I remember, I didn't know you don't really know what's happening, or I will say didn't know exactly what was happening. I just felt a weight on my chest. Like it was so hard to breathe. And I just felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. And I just remember breathing up and down and like pushing this elephant up and like letting it fall, right? It was like a weight up and down, up and down. And there was a moment where I just thought, I think I'll stop. And it's interesting because in that moment, I both knew that that meant I was going to die, but I also knew that I wasn't. And there was no fear. Um, so it was more, I would say my near death experience felt more like a spiritual experience. It was like a beautiful spiritual experience. There was no fear. And then I just stopped. And I remember, I think for me, maybe others too, I don't know, but my personality came with me there for a minute. I hadn't separated, ego yet. So my first thought was, oh, that's so much better. Breathing's really overrated. So I I just felt like so much peace. And I remember hearing my heart stop beating. And there was this buzzing sound that I didn't know I had. It was very quiet, but it went away. And I don't know if that was my nervous system or what that was, but it was this buzzing sound that just slowly faded. And then that's when I saw this beautiful light shining at my forehead. The only way I could describe it, it was like 1,000 suns shining at me, but it wasn't too bright. It had always been there, and it felt very natural and welcoming and just love. And so I went through, I don't know if I went through it. It wasn't like a tunnel per se, but it was like I was in it. And I remember saying, goodbye to my husband and my family, just a heartfelt gratitude, and just there was no grief, there was no sadness. It was like so much love and just feeling like everyone was going to be okay. And I'm just going to step on the other side of this veil. You know, I'll see you in a minute. I'm just going to step over here. It didn't feel like this long separation to me. So that was, just to jump right into it, that was the first moment for me, I suppose. And then beyond that, that's when I think when I left, I could say I left this world, so to speak, and I did step beyond the veil. And it feels like this thin veil between us and the other side. Here in our physical body, it feels like a really big deal. It feels, like it's permanent when you die. And I think for me experiencing it, it was like, oh, there is no death. For me, I woke up to the truth of who I really am, and it was beautiful. So I went through the other side, and then I went into my life review, and that started out, really all the way from birth until that moment. And I got to see every moment and experience it both as me and the person I was interacting with. And it wasn't every second, I brushed my teeth and tied my shoes. It was like the big moments of decision and interaction, these big moments in life. So moments that I helped somebody, some moments that I was healing somebody, moments of compassion. Like I got to re-experience that from my perspective and the person that I was interacting with. And it was beautiful. And then I also got to see those moments that I wasn't, my best self, where I was, out of alignment. And the first one, interesting, was when I was in kindergarten, and I was with a friend of mine, and we're in front of our house, and I was being mean to her on purpose. I wrote a book, and I go into it, but basically, she saw these paw prints in the cement in front of our house. And I went off on her about how the paw prints were a dog that died, and she was kind of laughing at them. And I was like, well, and this is me being mean on purpose, to be totally vulnerable. I was like, well, how would you like it if you died and everyone laughed at you? And like, I think I was just, I don't know, I was like 5 years old. And I think even at that time, though, like we feel this inner power and we play with it, right? At least that's how I can express it in human language here today. And I relived that moment in my NDE. That was the first time that I was, out of alignment with my soul and living out of ego. And I got to experience it as her. And I remember her just being so sad. Like, why is she being so mean to me? I don't understand. And I was hurting her feelings. So I got to relive that whole thing too. And there's no judgment though. It's like you feel yourself, you feel the other person, and then you feel that, whatever you call it is perfect. God, divine consciousness, oneness consciousness, whatever you want to call it, the universe, was also witnessing it. And it was totally impartial, no judgment, just unconditional love, watching this whole thing play out. And I was learning to never do that again. And then I also got to see the parts where I helped people, right? Maybe when I was working in the trauma intensive care and some of the things and the ways that I behaved there, it kind of comes back to you, but like, just I don't even know, like infinite bliss coming at you as like gratitude, like the universe saying, good job. We couldn't even hold it in this body, how much gratitude and love can come at you. It's really beautiful. So then that was where I think going through that entire experience, basically, to wrap it up, I got to experience me when I was aligned with my soul and when I wasn't. And then you get to see like, okay, I want more of that. I want less of that. Right. So it was beautiful. So that's not even the end of the story. That was just like that part. So then after that, I get taken. It's so funny because we don't have time. There's no linear time on the other side, and there's no this or that. But I almost want to say I went deeper, if I may. That's not the right word, but it's kind of how it felt, right? More further away from the living being I was, as Mariko incarnate, kind of a little bit further from that. So then I sort of detach from the physical being, detach from identity. And, I go through this experience where I see sort of a silhouette version of something, a person kind of floating and moving down into this circular, bright tube of light. And I remember feeling that there were beings around me. And I said, what's that? And they said, it's the part of you that gets attached. And so we just slowly watched this go through this tube of light. And then things got interesting. Then it was like getting, it's so interesting to go through this again, getting downloaded by these beings. And there was no words on the other side in the sense that we use our human words. There was no, people ask me a lot, what did you see? And we don't see with our human eyes anymore, but we see with our soul, if that makes sense. You see so clearly, but not in the way that we see now. And so I felt like I was being downloaded by these beautiful beings, information that I would need later. But they didn't tell me what it was. I just felt it coming into me. And then after that, I remember just feeling like I'm free. I'm me. Like, this is who I really am. This is who I've always been. Right. And I was never Mariko. I was never practicing alternative medicine. I was never a rock climber. Like, all of those identities that I had just fell away, and I was me and I was love. Right. And I remember, I guess again, it's interesting to express it in a human language, sort of a non-human experience, if you will. I felt like I was standing out watching the universe and just filled with bliss and thinking, I am love. I am joy. I am bliss. I was never any of these identities I had. And I am one with all beings everywhere. We are one. There is no one else, right? And just feeling so much love for everybody, not just human, but like everybody in the universe, just feeling that oneness connection. And at that point is when I heard, although I call it a thought wave because it was like a wave of it was like a wave of a thought coming at me. And then I guess you could say I heard it, of them saying, it's not your time. You have to go back. And of course, me being me, I was like, no, I'm good. And it was sort of that vibration back of resistance, if you will. And then they said it again. It's not your time. You have to go back and help people. And again, I was like, nope, I'm good. Because I'm bliss. Go back and be who? At that point, I felt like I'd been there for hundreds of years. And again, there's no time. So it's hard to say infinite time and then break it down to, hundreds of years. It doesn't make sense. But I was there long enough to where when they were saying, go back and help people, I'm like, go back and be who? Do what? This is me. Why would I go be anybody else? I am my true identity. And now you want me to go be something else? I don't know what you're talking about. And then they really got into it a little bit more. And and the whole time they're just infusing you with love. So you're like, oh, of course I'll do anything. And they said, it's not your time. And what they told me anyways was everybody has a time, and you can't leave before and you can't leave after. And this isn't your time. You have to go back and help people. Now, I will say in that people have asked me because there's so many questions. I felt they didn't tell me, but I felt like there were windows where you could leave. But the best option is for you to stay as long as you can and get as much done here as you can. Um, and at that, being filled with love and go back and help people. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then I was like, I can't get back in my body. Like, it's not like it's not like you've done this before and you're like, sure, I'll go do that. I didn't know how. So I just said, I can't get back in my body. I don't know how. And so I just remember feeling hurled through space. Like there was movement and I was moving very fast. And then I just, boom, slammed back in my body and took a breath and raking pain, horrid pain. And at that point, everything returned, ego, physical body, all of that was back. And my first thought, of course, was I need to go to the hospital. And then they kind of, again, it's hard to describe, but it was like they pulled me back, not like I died again, but it was almost like they pulled me back into that bliss. And they said, don't use Western medicine, which was really hard to hear coming from a medical background. I was like, it was hard to hear. The human in me was hard. I didn't want to hear that. But the experience was like, yeah, okay, I will follow that. I'm not going to mess with that. So it was hard.